Go ahead. Okay, I think we're here, and we just want to welcome each and every one of you. This is going to be a special day, the Health, Wellness, and Disaster Preparedness Day. And I tell you what, as we read the newspaper and we look around, it's a very timely message for the day in which we live. So we're glad you came, and we're going to have let's see, the Grand Fur Room, I believe, is on my left. Is that correct? On my left, the Grand Fur Room. And, well, we'll direct. When we get to that point, we'll direct you so you know where to go. Rob, I'd like to welcome you to come up now and do your introduction.
Thank you, Larry. Glad everyone is here today. We have our first presenter, Dr. Ed Noyes. You don't know, he has written a few books. One's called Alternative and Mystical Healing Therapies. And so he's going to have those available during the day. He's written a couple other books dealing with that same topic. And just to tell you a little bit about Dr. Noyes, for an introduction, he's a graduate of Loma Linda University, 1959. That's getting back there, Doctor. He's retired in 2000 after 40 years of general practice in Forest Grove, Oregon. He served in the U.S. Army between 1967 and 1969. He is a Vietnam veteran. How about we thank our brother Ed for his service? How about a round of applause for him? Thank you. In 71, he and his wife Emma participated in a short-term mission at a hospital in Phuket, Thailand. He received a Master's of Public Health degree from Loma Linda University in 1979. Dr. Noyes' special interest for 35 years has been preventative medicine and nutrition. He's been active in medical evangelism. We're so glad he's here today with us, and conducting educational seminars for ministers, health educators, health professionals in Eastern Europe and other countries. And so, I don't want to take any more time. Welcome Dr. Noyes to our presentation today.
Thank you. I did not come alone today. I don't think, there we are. I did not come alone. Glenda, would you stand? He mentioned my wife Emma. She's deceased, and for about a little over a year we have been married, so I wanted to make you aware of Glenda here. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to join with you today. My history is not great. 40 years as a general practitioner. However, there was some very interesting periods of time. When he mentioned that a mission hospital, I had the privilege of going to Phuket, Thailand, in a mission hospital for a period of time. That's a paradise, actual paradise. Today it's a great resort. Then it was the old Thai. Now, the interesting thing, when I came back from Thailand, I got interested in preventive medicine, lifestyle, realizing that people could do more for themselves than I could do for them if they would change some of the habits of life. For over there on this island in Thailand, you would treat the same people for the same disease over and over, rather than taking time to put the mosquito net out and a variety of things, but simply put some sandals on so that the hookworm didn't come up through the feet, and so forth. And I came back home and I said, you know, we really have the same problem right here in the United States. Why is it that we just look overseas as need prevention? Our diseases are different, but we can also deal with them by a lifestyle. And so I began to hold public discourses, public seminars, sharing not only with my personal patients, but the other part of the community. I did this year after year. For 25 years, I conducted 4 times a year stop smoking clinics. And as this went along, People became interested. The scientific community came in with some knowledge, finally some solid proof of what was causing the heart attacks. At that period of time, in the early 60s, a great surge of sudden death from heart attacks was occurring. Medical science had a kind of a clue what might be it, but eventually the scientific community came out and says, here, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and these particulars are the factors behind it, and if we can turn these around. So I begin to present that to people. And as I, year by year, was presenting these subjects, another interesting type of health therapy seemed to show up that I didn't understand. If you remember back in 1971, those that are that old, President Nixon went to China. China had been closed totally under the communist regime since 1949. And in 1971, President Nixon was invited to China. When he came back, the reporters that had accompanied him spoke a lot more about acupuncture than they did the political events that went on during this foray. And people began to come into the office and ask, what's this all about? I had not heard the word prior to that event. Through medical school, I never heard it. And they were telling the story of how individuals were having surgery, right away, anesthesia of acupuncture. One person was eating an apple while they were operating on the chest. Unbelievable. And so people began to ask. I didn't have a good answer. My fellow physicians knew no more than I, and that was zero. So what do? You like to give them an answer. I had an idea in my mind. I was impressed, probably the power of hypnotism. But I didn't want to give an opinion. I wanted something solid to share with people. So I didn't have egg on my face later when the real understanding came about. And so this went on, and then there became yoga, there became reflexology, a whole variety, iridology. These variety of they were labeled alternative or type of therapies. They were not in the straight science world, and I was puzzled. But I continued to conduct, over 20 years, a period of time, these seminars to share the knowledge of simple ways of life and nutrition that would vastly change the likelihood of a variety of common diseases of the Western culture. Because diabetes type 2 is a man-made disease. Simple. But man doesn't like to change. He wants to have a pill that makes him well and keep on doing what he's doing. Doesn't work very well. Oh, it's good for the doctor and the pharmaceutical companies. Real good. But that was my interest. And as I went along, and year after year conducting seminars over maybe 8 weeks period of time, once a week, for my community, these other therapies began to creep in. And people continued to ask. And I was looking and reading books, and the National Institute of Health was examining them. Actually, by year 2000, they had spent $2 billion in investigation scientifically, these these alternative therapies, looking for how do they work? Do they really change the physiology, the biochemistry of my body, the hormones, so forth? Do they really? And even with all this time, they couldn't come up with a positive answer. I kept waiting for an answer before I said anything. And then after that many years, I was fortunate enough to come across a little book called 2B1. Now that title doesn't make sense to you. But once you understand what was in the book, it was a perfect title. And we'll go through a little later what was in that book. That gave me now an understanding of the mindset from those that were propagating these therapies and the Eastern culture from which they came. So let us proceed here this morning. The title of the talk is Alternative and Mystical Healing Therapies. Are they medically sound and spiritually safe? That's what you would want to know. And also, do they have a history of benefiting the civilization from which they came? Or did those civilizations have a record of being the worst health in the world? We'll find out. So as we proceed, let's take a look. Now, I'm going to do something different. I don't think you've ever heard anybody do this before. But many people make their choice of type of medical therapy based upon their worldview. What's a worldview? Where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? What's the future? Well, that's sort of strange. How could I be choosing the type of discipline of medicine for my therapy, for my well-being, for preventive medicine, on my belief of where I came from, the origin? Let's look at this for a moment. Worldview. There is the Judeo-Christian worldview, which is prominent in this country. It's kind of losing out gradually, but it's been prominent here in the past 200 years. There is the Eastern worldview first of all, coming back to the Judeo-Christian, the biblical view says God created. In the beginning, God created. And the Bible is built upon that premise. If that isn't true, the rest of the book is worthless. It's built upon that premise. Now, the Eastern view is we came from a balancing of a cosmic force that had two sides to it. When it got just into oneness, everything came into existence. Now, that's the Eastern mindset. The Darwinian evolutionary says there was a big bang. And they're changing. It was a little different. It started from a blob, now it's a big bang, and amazing how many of those scientists are beginning to say there had to be some intelligence behind this. But looking at those three, how could those concepts in my mind make a difference of when I go out to find medical care for my stomach pain or whatever? Let's proceed. We're going to look first at the Judeo-Christian viewpoint, then we will come to the Eastern. Life and health is maintained by being in harmony with the physical laws of the universe. When I went to medical school, actually through high school, chemistry and physics, mathematics, college, 4 years of heavy science. Medical school, the first 2 years, deep science. The last 2 years, you're doing more clinical work. But I spent a lifetime after that continually studying science. How does chemistry work? How does the physics, the forces of nature? And I learned to treat and to deal with illness under the rules that I understood of physics and chemistry. That's all of your doctors will be doing that. And so we then want to have a person, if we're teaching preventive medicine, is to live in a style that you're promoting harmony with those physical and chemical laws so that we get proper sleep, we get proper exercise, clean water. We think of the germ theory, the variety of other things. In prevention, we want proper nutrition that gives us the best. So this, be the Judeo-Christian worldview, would choose, without thinking about his worldview, would choose some type of medical practice that would be in harmony with those principles. And I think that's what most of you choose to do without thinking about where did I come from or how did I get here. Now, the person with the Darwinian viewpoint, probably most of those will be doing similar. They believe in the laws of physics and chemistry and mathematics. And so, but there's a changing phase here in the last 50 years of who we choose. Now we're going to look a little bit after we looked at those, what was the Eastern worldview, where so many of the alternative practices have come out of the East. And people would ask me, should I use these? Are they valuable? And I would say, for 20 years, I'm not sure about them. I have my own idea, but I can't give you a positive answer. Till I finally found that little book that gave me the clue and I understood. Then I could share with them my understanding of the philosophy, the origin, the background of acupuncture, or yoga exercises. Now I would share with them, and I said, you choose what you want, that's my understanding. And they said, thank you, that helps me make a determination with proper information. So we're looking, not only the Judeo-Christian is interested in the physical laws, he's also interested in God's spiritual laws. That of the mind, being at peace and comfort, very important. Tremendous amount of illness can come with worry, with fear, and so forth. And so that's a strong component part of this. Now the Big Bang, that life, they still felt, pretty much life was maintained by being in harmony with the physical and the social laws of their civilization. What is disease, first of all? If we're going to talk about prevention, preventing what? Disease. What's disease? That's the process where, read it here, it is an effort of nature to free the system from changes or conditions that result from violations of the laws of health. Make sense? If you have an automobile and you don't use proper maintenance, you have a breakdown, that's disease, shall we say. The people, same thing. We want to not have proper sleep. We want to eat that which tastes best, but maybe not conductive to good health over time. We make those, and eventually something goes wrong. We want a pill that solves it, or the doctors should have an answer for us right away. So this is there. Now we want to come to what is scientific medicine. Well, scientific medicine is where, first of all, its goal is to be in harmony with the physical and chemical laws of the universe. But scientific medicine would be, say, let's take a diabetes. The investigation of this will be done, the particulars, where there are examinations, biochemistry of the body, the blood test and all of this, but also there will be the research where there will be thousands of people being researched, done in a manner where there are the doctors that are doing certain things in therapy are not the ones that examine and evaluate it at the end. They will have a control group that does not get the therapy. There will be another group that gets a fake therapy, a placebo. You have the three groups over a long period of time, and maybe in the middle of this period you'll switch who gets what. And now you're beginning to get closer to truth in understanding. But that will be done many places around the world, and maybe you'll take 100 the different tests, put them together, put all the information together. It's called a meta-analysis. You're getting closer to truth. There are so many variables and things that shade the truth, and that is, if it meets the test, so now one doctor over in Germany or in China gets the same results, understands, and it fits the pattern. It's called scientific medicine. When it has not gone through this rigor, and it's just assumed, it's called alternative. Now there's some alternatives that are very, very good. The Swedish massage, shall we say. The massage of just doing massage. It's called alternative, but it's very proper. And it's a functional, it feels good, people like it, and it promotes circulation. So it's an alternative, but it's one that you would choose without question. We'll look at what would be one that is not. Well, along comes acupuncture. That's not considered scientific medicine. But the Institute of Health looked at it for years, and at one point they said, yes, we found that it does work mildly on a little pain for this problem and something else. But all of that study was done without a placebo in their studies. When they finally found a placebo, that a person thought he got the acupuncture and he didn't, they found it equal. Doing with thousands of patients over a long period, that it did not truly. Now there's some power sometimes in some of this, and so there may be certain people that got well and so forth. We don't deny that. But taking over a long period, could the medical society say this is a science? No, because it didn't have the proof behind it. And we want to look at what is the foundation for some of those therapies that have come in and swept through the Western culture like they're a gift from God. And people choose it. At first there was just, they arose out of the New Age movement, and then the progressives. And first it was certain disciplines, chiropractors and naturopaths and allopathic MDs and osteopaths are just as much in it as the rest. And so we want to know a little more about this thing. Let's proceed. The natural remedies we would look at as sunshine, pure air, water, exercise, temperance. That means judicial amount of good things, not taking any bad things. A proper diet, a plant-based diet is the best, no question, hands down. People that have followed that for a lifetime, not even knowing about it, certain areas of the world have the longest lifespan, the less disease. And you've heard of probably the book called The Blue Zone. This is a book, and the reason the title Blue Zone, as these investigative people, these were high-quality investigators out of Harvard University and elsewhere. Each country supplied also scientific men to help. They were looking for the longest-lived people on Earth, and there was 3 or 4 groups at certain locations. And most of those groups lived in a kind of a commune in a way, a section of country that they spent all their lives living that way. And then there was a group out of Loma Linda that actually worldwide lived, it also fit. But they find that now these groups were living like 10 years longer than other people that weren't following those, and they were primarily living on the plant foods for their diet. Now, trust in God, oh yes, we all trust Him, we believe in Him. But do we obey Him? The trust means we're in obedience. We believe Him so much we're willing to follow Him. And we believe that His power is the one that sustains us. He created us. It sustains us. And He's in control of it. I'm not in control. By spinning a needle on my skin doesn't change what my God does. That's the Judeo-Christian viewpoint. Now there's another viewpoint, and we're going to look at that shortly. Here's a picture of that little book called To Be One by Ernest Steed. This man was a health educator. He spent his lifetime traveling the world, and he was high up in a leadership position, learning these things to be able to distribute it among people. He traveled and met in different countries, and he studied the cultures of the entire world. He went around the world 7 times in this type of activity. And he studied the cultures. He studied the types of therapy and medication and so forth, all of these places. And eventually, he wrote this little book, To Be One by Ernest H.G. Steed. That cleared me up. I finally understood what was going on around me. And we'll share that with you. Don't get lost in all those figures. They're a part of this story, but we'll not be getting into those. That's just the front of his book. Now, in this Eastern viewpoint, the Eastern world, they have the doctrine of cosmic force, or energy. And it believes in a good and an evil, a positive and a negative, that dualism. Most of the world is involved, and it goes back millennia, believing of a dualism, that the 2 forces, the yin and the yang, you've heard of that, and the qi. We're talking the same thing here, strong and weak. This is this cosmic force that somehow out through the universe there was this great creative power separated from a living being, a God. And that this force had 2 sides. Like a coin, you have image on one side and a different image on the other, but just one coin. This is their explanation of this cosmic power. And this cosmic power amalgamated and eventually became one. The image is destroyed and it was of one power without the two sides. Total perfect balance. When that occurred, creation occurred. Earth, the cosmos, man became there. But all that was created was in a dual form. All right. This little picture here gives you a sign of illustration of coming together, the proper balance brought about in this story, the creation of earth and man and the cosmos. The different words, good, evil, positive, negative, light, dark, yin, yang. We've all heard the yin yang for a long period of time. Now this slide, let me back up for a moment. You notice this little circle of harmony, we're all familiar with that. And most people say, well, that just means everybody wants to be in harmony. This is actually a symbol of that creation that I just spoke about, where the powers came together on there. And then as we look here, a Chinese man gave me this slide. He was from Singapore and he was lecturing. He had been a Buddhist for many years and then became a Christian. And he was telling the same story, the background story. And as he pointed out, that all the black represented the bad. All of the white represented the good. But in this philosophy, there is nothing perfectly bad or perfectly good. You got to put something and mix it up. And so we have a little bad in the good, a little good in the bad. And you put them together, and that's the sign of the origin of life under this story. And so when you see that symbol, it has a different meaning for you now, having learned its origin. Actually, I have a picture of the Chinese emperor. It goes back 2,900 years BC. That was supposedly the originator of this symbol. It's an ancient one. Yesterday, and I showed it in a seminar I was conducting. Now, this story is of this creation, like I spoke of, is told in words from the Chinese writings. And let's look at that. The Chinese Mythology Encyclopedia Britannica is listing this. It says, the totality of life within the circle of all existence, which depended upon the harmonious blending of yin and yang, or yang, whichever way you like to pronounce it. The yang is the good, the light, positive, masculine. The yin, evil, dark, feminine, negative. This means that from the interaction of the two cosmic forces, all patterns, ideas, systems, and culture evolved. Change is constant, simple, and easy, and whatever issues from it is good. That's simply telling the story that I just went through. But that's out of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Now, at the time that this creation supposedly occurred in this theory, there was a sound given off. Om. And this is a symbol representing that sound. I mentioned this because in a lot of these alternative therapies you hear about frequency. Machines checking your frequency. It has its entire origin out of this philosophy. Not from medical science, not from physics and chemistry, but with this story of creation through the amalgamation of these powers, a sound given that each of us is supposed to have an individual frequency that can be analyzed now by certain machines of medical science, and the world's physics and chemists can't find that. You find it in the writings of those propagating these philosophies. So it's very important to realize where it came from. It's not recognized by the science of the world. This little diagram is written to help explain this that I've just covered. And what we've just covered is the foundation of astrology and several other things you'll notice over here. But up here, we have the cosmos, we have the earth, we have man. We have a connecting, on this triangle, a connecting tube. Let's say this is a neon sign. And they have twisted and made a form of a cosmos here, but the same juice, the same gas is going through this tube here and over here. And they form an earth here and man here by twisting these tubes. And but now man wants to get back in and to be a full part of this gas, and that's what he's hell bent upon doing in this life. Trying to get out of reincarnation and back into this power that's supposed, this evolution, this power that they were supposed to have been created from. But this particular power that had the two sides has 100 names or more. Synonyms. Qi is the one you've heard the most. Yin Yang and Qi. Yes. And we'll be looking deeper into this, but I want you to recognize that the belief, the concept in this, and it's the foundation of most of these alternative therapies, that this power is also called God. A living being, as God is taken out of the picture. And it's a cosmic force, a vital force. It's consciousness. It's the I am, even they say, is this power, and is the power behind the therapies. In that philosophy, it explains how astrology is supposed, because this being everything made from this power, then there is constant, instant communication, association with all of the universe together at once. And that's the reason behind, that's the explanation behind astrology. That the position, the planets, whatever they're doing, that man is simply a microcosm. He is the universe within himself. Nature worship, that's why they climb the tree, to keep the tree from being cut down, because that's a living part of the earth. Sun worship is certainly a part of this. Paganism actually means nature worship. Neo-paganism that we have today, the New Age movement, they certainly are nature interested. The word pantheism, that means everything that's made with this philosophy is a god, because that power is a god. And panentheism is a little different. It says, no, there is a living God, but he left a spark of his divinity within you. That's the little difference. Chinese would tell us in their philosophy that the cosmos and man is a miniature of, it has everything within, knowledge, intelligence, everything that the cosmos has. It's just laying there latent. You need to learn how to bring it out. We have the circle here, and the man in the middle, representing this philosophy. That's the zodiac, symbols around the outside. This you usually see representing holistic medicine, but it's representing this foundation that we have just covered. A mirror of the world, microcosm of the macrocosm, man as conceived in astrology. I need to read it here. Reflects the rhythms and the structure of the universe in the same way as the universe mirrors the rhythms and structure of man himself. Everything is a part of everything. That came from the book by Maureen Vesey of Magic and the Supernatural. Now some of those terms that are referred to, that triangle lines that are used, that are talking about this cosmic energy, but many of us have not acquired in the past with them. Well, look here, you have certain, the Hinduism called prana. In the Chinese traditional medicine, the word qi, the qi will have yin and yang, the two parts, but qi is referring to that basic energy. The logos in the Greek mana. You go to Hawaii, mana loa, mana this, mana that, throughout the islands, you have the word mana. Orenda, the American Indian, that's from the Algonquin tribe. The word Orenda. Animal magnetism. Franz Mesmer, the hypnotist, he tried to explain his hypnotism as using this theoretical power, and that this power was then what brought about hypnotism. And Palmer, the word onate, orgone energy, vital energy, otic force, bioplasma, Russian. Now let's look at some of the more common words used here in the United States, but referring to the same thing. We have one, all is one is all, self, supreme, self, higher power, consciousness, pure consciousness, creative principle. The word God is used referring to that power. Essence, breath of life, vital force, vitalism, vibrational force, and on. Architect of the universe, referring to this mythical cosmic power that man, the Eastern worldview says man came from. Obviously then, we have by Ernestine, says, obviously then many of these primitive systems were agreed on the idea that life originated from the unification of good and evil. All right. Illness and death. If man was formed by balancing a cosmic energy, what is illness? Well, we better go define. Yes, we defined that illness was the body's response to when we weren't following the health laws. And so here it says death and illness is because the energy is out of balance under this philosophy. All right? Well, let's go a little further. How do we correct it then? If it's out of balance, we balance the energy, and that's supposed to bring health. We come back here. There we go. So, to balance, to unblock, to infuse, restore energy, cosmic energy. This is not talking of electricity, that it's an energy that can't be found or measured, but it's talked about. Well, what are some of the things that what are some of those treatment types? Acupuncture, that are based on this philosophy, yoga, and the yoga exercises. They're trying to move that energy, balance it. Reflexology, its basis is there. Now, the ones doing it may not even realize and understand this. Homeopathy, that's supposedly taking the cosmic power out of the plant, diluting it, and then finally you don't have even any of the plant, but the power, the spirit, still gets magnified, and that's homeopathy. Nothing of the original substance. Tai Chi Chuan, the Tai Chi has all of these round movements. What are they doing? They're moving that energy through the body to balance it. It's all based upon that concept. Meditation, just the physical meditation is supposedly balancing the inner crystals, Qigong, vibrational magnetism, iridology, others, all of them based upon that philosophy. Now, the Hindu says, I breathe that power, that universal energy through my nose, and it comes in my nose and goes down to the bottom. And then supposedly there are 7 centers in this body called chakras that are centers of this energy. And so when I breathe it through the nose, it goes through these mystical channels down to the bottom. And by doing meditation or yoga exercises, I will move in time in an undulating manner, that energy, that power, that cosmic power, up to the top of my head. I move on up, and it helps me get out of the reincarnation. This is a religious practice, because the whole goal of the Hinduism is to get out of reincarnation and get into the spirit world. And he does this with the meditation, with the yoga exercises, and the Chinese medicine the same. It's a religious act. It's a fundamental act in their religion that's been brought into the West as a health measure. But actually, it's an entering wedge to change our worldview. I know this because the book Aquarian Conspiracy, written by Marilyn Ferguson in 1980, which is sort of the New Age Bible. It says these practices are the most effective way of changing the society's worldview toward that of the Eastern. The whole purpose. And it comes in as medicine, where it really has another purpose. And all right, next. That shows you an undulating way that's supposed to come up. And then this person's supposed to have this radiating aura outside. This energy is coming out that way, and people that are deep into the cultic can supposedly read that aura. The rest of us don't. I took this picture out of a book that a spirit guide had dictated to a lady by the name of Prophet. And this is talking about this business of moving this energy up through the body, and you see the undulation, the way it's doing it. In so doing, showing you that it is a religious thing, that eventually you bring her up to your full godhood. Christ self into full godhood. How do you do it? It is achieved by, and this comes out of the book, by meditation and yoga, by visualizing your mind, imagining it, saying that it'll happen, and by cleansing those chakras. We'll not be bothered too much with that. So as we move forward, the Chinese have really the same philosophy, but they distribute this energy not through the chakras. In their philosophy, it comes through perpendicular lines of the body called
5 minutes.
5 minutes? All right, I got to hurry. Quick. All right. And it comes through there, and they say we can balance that by putting needles in spots of the body, because if the energy's out of balance running through, we can fix that, put a needle, and that balances the energy. And so they have various ways of doing the same thing. The Tai Chi, the martial arts are really about in that. The acupuncture, the meditation, and the various ways of doing it. The American Indian, he has the same philosophy. You notice the dark and white, the black and white, and down here we have it shaded different. Well, you go to the Navajo Indian Reservation and they have sand paintings. They're products of the earth. They make paintings, they put them on the floor. They bring the sick person in, set them on it. It absorbs the energy, balances the energy. Take the sick person out to take the sand painting, scoop it up, and go bury it in the sand, dealing with that part. So we have these trusting in the power of life within self, trusting in the modalities to correct flow of energies. That principles are behind this. They're called pantheism or panentheism. And where is the origin of all of this? Where did it come? Let's really move along here. It actually had its start down in the Garden of Eden, where the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil actually says the devil says if you take good and you take evil, mix it together, you get a superior product. And that's what he was promoting. And that's what this whole system does. Same thing. So all of this had its origin. We see it, the Judeo-Christian sees its origin as coming out of that garden story. Is it medically sound? Well, China in 1949, if you were born, you would expect to live 35 years. That was millennia of time using balanced energy to deal with illness. But then they started having clean water, closed sewers, and changed things. And by the year 2000, they could expect to live 70 years, double their lifespan by changing the concept of what caused disease. Not a balanced energy, but what you and I know. I wrote several books, as they mentioned earlier. This is one called Alternative and Mystical Healing Therapies. You will find that which I have been presenting today in the book if you're interested. I'm not here to sell books on that, but some people like one. They have them here for sale on that part. I have two websites, and spiritualisticpractices.com and then healthandspirituality.info. That one has 2,700 pages on this topic. Huge. You can get most everything you want on there. So for those that have that interest, thank you for your kind attention. Hopefully this has been information gives you an intelligent choice. Do I want those types of therapies or not? It's your choice. Thank you very much.
Can you put the website back up?
Oh, all right. Anybody like to copy those? Okay. Well, yeah. All right. I'll close down my computer ready for the next